Hey now, welcome to the 14th episode of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along with us, welcome back. And if this is your first time listening to us, well then welcome. Tonight's quote comes from Mr. Tom Schroeder in his book, Acid Test, LSD, Ecstasy, and the Power to Heal. It is helpful to refer back to it, to reconnect, have a daily practice of some kind. Whether it's getting out in nature or doing artwork or any other way, but at the same time, it can turn over into grasping and worrying about losing it. It's about letting things happen, not grasping. You can trust that the same inner healing intelligence that gave you that experience, if you create space for it, it will keep working for you. So I chose that quote just because that was a book I really liked, and that quote's really motivating. But I think what that quote means for me is that the power to heal through psychedelics doesn't come from the experience itself, but it comes from the lessons we learn from it. And that is, in fact, the true therapy that we achieve with psychedelics. And this relates somewhat to my guest tonight. I just somehow through Twitter and seeing posts about stuff, I saw her post about psychedelic therapy or retweet a link or something like that. And, the purpose of this podcast is to talk to cool people doing cool things. So I'd like to introduce tonight everyone to Jessica. How are you doing there, Jessica?
Hi, guys. I'm doing well. How's everyone doing?
Great. We're doing good. And,
awesome.
And as always, my co-host Stan is on the line. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man.
Awesome. So yeah, Jessica, we're excited to have you on. Not just because of the things that we have in common to talk about, but you're also our first female guest, and so it's been kind of a sausage party up until now, and so we wanted to definitely get the female perspective represented here about psychedelics. So why don't you just give a little background of when you first came in encounter with psychedelics, and how they've been kind of a part of your life so far.
Yeah, awesome. First, I'm really glad to be the first female and represent that. So I appreciate that, guys. Yeah. So my experience with psychedelics started a lot like everyone else's. It was recreational at first. I kind of dabbled mostly mushrooms, and I had great experiences. They were fun and light. And it came a time I probably was 24, and I was not doing the best in life. I was working, but I probably should have been being more of an adult. And I think for my 24th birthday, actually for my 25th birthday, I take that back. A friend of mine gave me a handful of mushrooms, basically. And she's just like, hold your hands out, and dumps a bunch of mushrooms into my hands. And I just downed them. I didn't weigh them out. I just put them in my mouth. Everyone's kind of iffy about, the way they taste. And I've never really been iffy about it because I feel like it's eating a little bit of cardboard stringy stuff. And, the results are well worth it in a couple of minutes. So she turned around and they were gone. And she was like, oh, I didn't expect you to eat all of that. So I was all right. I was so cool. But not 5 minutes later, it's all that set and setting. 5 minutes later, I found myself in a situation where I was getting a phone call, and my mom was like, "Hey, you should probably come home now." And I'm like, "Oh, this is probably not the most fun situation I got myself into." So I did make it home, and really, I had the first difficult trip I've ever had, but it was one of the most valuable trips ever. It was like me sitting myself down and being like, "Hey, stop your garbage, stop your nonsense. It's time for you to grow up now. This isn't a game." And I did. I got myself really together. That's when I became a personal trainer, and I opened up my own business, and through that I learned yoga, which is what I do now. I teach yoga, and I still do some personal training, but I predominantly uh, teach yoga, and I teach it to populations that wouldn't normally be exposed to it, or that would have some. A lot of people have reservations about trying yoga. It's intimidating, and going to classes is sort of like throwing you into the middle of a semester at school and asking someone to catch up. So I feel really inclined to help people and almost baby them through the process, because that's what someone did for me, and it really helped me through. So that's kind of also the way I approach psychedelics when someone either approaches me and is curious, or approaches me with some serious intention with, hey, I'd like to take a trip for this, for this reason, that reason. Uh, but so yeah, I had that experience and I got myself together, but I don't know, living life and things were, being an adult was intense. So I was in a situation where I was in a pretty toxic relationship, and I couldn't get out. We were pretty invested together, and I fell into a pretty deep depression. I didn't know how to get out of it. Myself being a pretty proactive person, I reached out to the people around me, and they're not that they were malicious about it, but their instinct was, well, you usually figure out the solutions to things, so I'm sure you'll be okay. Uh, and that's not usually what you want to hear when you're really, really, really depressed. Yeah, like I'm suicidal. Like I wasn't actively like going. I didn't have plans to hurt myself, but I would definitely say I would have been fine not waking up any given day.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I had done antidepressants and stuff like that, and they didn't. They almost made me manic. Like I just wasn't sleeping, and they didn't do me any good. They almost sent me the other way. So I was reading, this is in 2012. I was reading a John Hopkins study, maybe 2013, a John Hopkins study, the first, I think it was the first stage clinical trials for treatment-resistant depression with psilocybin. And they were seeing some really, really great, some really great results. And I figure, I've done mushrooms before, and I did have one experience where I got some spiritual whatever. But at that point, I was willing to try whatever. So I looked for mushrooms, and I always say they're the unicorn of the drug world. They never come around when you want them to, and everyone's always like, I can get them, but they never really. They at the time they weren't just reliably around. But I finally did get my hands on them, and I remember tripping, but I don't remember anything. Again, like you said, the experience itself wasn't what really made the change. But I woke up the next day, and I felt like I had been transplanted into a different person. Like I was like back to being a human. Like I felt things. And when you're depressed, you don't always feel sad. You just don't feel things sometimes. You feel nothing. And I felt feelings. I was like sleeping. And this is like I'm talking day and night. If my depression was on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely suicidal, any given day before this, I was a 7 or an 8. I think, and I'm pretty good at journaling, so I actually have records of this. And I was down to like a 4, and like any other person would have ups and downs, but I never got to that level of depression, and this took one dose, and that to me, that just, I was floored. It was so ridiculous to me that was so accessible, and I was so miserable for so long. That I just delved into the research. Like, why did this work for me? Like, why is no one looking at this like more intensely, And that's that took me down, a couple of different rabbit holes. One of them being, at the time it was cultivation. I cultivated for about 5 years, because I was terrified of being without, and I was terrified of, my friends. Depression's a real thing, and there's, addiction's a real thing. And this helped me with both. And that was, more than I could say for almost anything else that I tried. So, I've kind of turned myself into this wealth of knowledge for everyone around me, and I tend to be the person everyone comes to, just to either be educated. If they need me to hold their hands. I don't care if it takes me trip sitting for people, or having them asking a gazillion questions. It's basically, I see myself as an advocate, for making this accessible to everyone, to the general public that really, can responsibly use this. I feel like it's an invaluable tool we have in society that can really change things, and change the way we live our lives. It's just crazy how we just haven't even really acknowledged this in in medicine and society up until now.
Yeah, I mean that's a great story. I mean, and it's really interesting too, and it seems to be a common thread that people don't just cure their own depression with psychedelics. They seem to also get this need and drive to help other people with the same problem too, and I mean, that's not a very common thing with standard antidepressants. They don't make people, even if they, dull someone's depression, it doesn't make them want to help other people, and, I think that's the amazing part of, I mean, especially mushrooms. But I, you can look at the history of LSD and stuff like that. And I mean, they're very community building. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of cultism. And I don't know if you run across that with any comments on your stuff about, dosage and like,
Yeah.
people trying to be wizards and stuff like that. But, I think for the most part, it's a community that wants to lift each other up, and help and heal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you run across some of the people that get a little culty about it, and maybe a little reckless, even, I'll say.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I feel like the psychedelic experience is so intense, and there's so much crammed into such a short time. Whether it's LSD, which is a long time, but at the same, really a lot still happens in that period of time. And on mushrooms, at least in my experience, mushrooms, even, I think more goes on in my head in that 4 or 6 hour trip than during any of the limited LSD trips I've had. But it's almost like you look. Well, it's not almost. You literally look at your problems from a different angle. You can't physically look at, you can't do without. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the like the actual mechanisms, how it works in your brain. Are you guys like familiar with like how psilocybin works?
Somewhat, but I mean, you can go through.
Yeah, well, delving into my research with why it works on depression, it sits in your serotonin 2A receptors, and then it unlike an SSRI where it would plug up your reuptake, so you're essentially creating more serotonin in your blood, coursing through your blood in your brain. This essentially makes it so it hugs the receptor for a longer period of time. It's not like a short, hence why 1 or 2 doses last 4 to 6 months for depression, which is wild. But it doesn't create the same need to redose, and you also don't create the same, in my opinion, like chemical imbalance, because it's almost identical to serotonin. It's not like you're adding some other chemical into your brain. You know what I mean? Like your body almost hugs it like it's a natural chemical, and that's spectacular. In my opinion, we're kind of made to receive this experience. So it's just so it makes so much sense that in this experience you're kind of sitting yourself down. Your higher level thinking, believe it or not, is actually reduced, and that's when your ego's gone, and you can go, okay, listen, this is this is how to attack this is how to attack that. It's also why it's really effective with addiction. It's not, whereas methadone, these things replace Suboxone, these things replace the opiate or whatever the actual substance is. Mushrooms tend to sit you down and make you analyze why you're using, which is really attacking the problem. And that's why I think, in my experience and the people that I know that have seen benefits there, that's why it works for them. It wasn't like it didn't make them feel, withdrawals or whatever. It was just like, it makes it worth it that you see why you've been using and how to fix it. It's just a totally different approach to me. And it's just, it's so well worth looking at, especially if you look at MRI studies and stuff. It's crazy. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it this way, like, say you were going to a therapist for addiction or whatever. part of being an addict is lying to yourself and other people, and you can lie to a therapist, and like you can't lie to a mushroom experience, and you can run from it, and I think that's when people have their toughest trips. That for me personally, every trip that I have that's difficult, like it's because I'm running from like some lesson the mushroom or myself is trying to teach myself. And you kind of miss that moment. But yeah, I think that's one of the most therapeutic things about mushrooms is just their brutal honesty sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, brutal honesty is really what makes us progress. And I don't. That's why I don't really call them even bad trips. It's a difficult trip, but I don't want to tell people, especially when they haven't experienced one before. But I don't want to let them know, when they ask, "Am I gonna have a bad trip?" or "What happens if I have a bad trip?" I don't. The truth is, it might be the most valuable trip you've ever had or you'll ever have. But it sounds terrifying to people. Sometimes like the sugarcoating it or whatever, or the nice approach isn't the way your brain's going to grasp the concept of what needs to happen in the best manner. So sometimes what you need best, believe it or not. And even if that's a difficult trip, you just have to run with it. It's easier said than done, but yeah, you can just run with it. It's I guess it's still easier in my opinion than an LSD trip getting stuck there, but I've never been stuck in a bad experience with LSD, thankfully.
Yeah, I've been in bad situations with LSD, but I've never I don't know. I've never had what I would consider like any difficult trip I've had on LSD pales in comparison to the difficult trips I've had on mushrooms, and I don't know what to attribute that to, but I do know, all of my LSD experiences for the most part were like in high school and very shortly after. A couple like music festivals here and there, in my adult life with LSD, but for the most part, it was like LSD as a, carefree teenager, and then mushrooms as an adult with responsibilities and worries and stuff like that. And so like I don't know if I attribute it to that or the substance, but definitely with like you're saying with the longevity of the experience with LSD, if you are having a bad time, you do got to strap in for that ride. But yeah. So like as far as psychedelic therapy, I mean, I know on Twitter you retweet a lot of links about the progress being made in therapy and stuff like that. What's your vision like in the future of what psychedelic therapy will entail, at least in this country?
Well, it's funny you ask. So my entire goal, basically, and don't get me wrong, I'm just, essentially some educated schmuck, but I have no degree in this. I have no, not that there is a psychedelic degree, but I'm not a psychologist, whatever. What I'd like to do is gather a bunch of reputable professionals and open up a psychedelic clinic where you can go get seen by a professional, a doctor, whatever, a nurse practitioner, where they can go, okay, why are you here? This is what we have to offer you. These are your options. These are your dosage options. Let's weigh these things out. And set a course of treatment for you, and not just treatment in the experience, but post psychedelic integration. I think is, if just as important, if not more important than the experience. I've heard people that come to me after ayahuasca experiences that they either they went to South America or they have them in these little churches in suburban New Jersey, and they're left with these experiences they can't decipher, or they don't know what to do with this information, and that's not cool. Sometimes these psychedelic experiences are so overwhelming or so consuming, you can't figure them out on your own. And not to say I'm a therapist, but just having people there to talk it out with. And yeah, having therapists if that's the route that's better best for them or whatever. I think all of this is pretty feasible. It's going to take work, and obviously it's going to take legislature. Unfortunately, we're still stuck in the middle of prohibition. Despite I think it's Oregon and Colorado that are seriously looking to decriminalize, if not legalize, mushrooms, which is a great step. But we still got a long way to go with prohibition and getting over that hurdle before we can make these clinics accessible. I don't think that it necessarily has to be, although I do see value in the retreat style, going to get treatment or whatever, whether it's here or outside the country. I don't think that that's accessible to everyone, both financially and otherwise. Not a lot of people can give up the time, even if they could give up the money. And I've always been this way about fitness, and I've been this way about yoga. I don't think it should be exclusive. This is something that I don't think should be a privilege. And I think it should be accessible to just about everyone that can responsibly use it and consciously understand what they're getting into. But yeah, I would like to have that kind of setup going. And I did work this past year, and I went down to Micro Meditations. I don't know if you guys are familiar, in Jamaica, where they have legal psilocybin mushroom retreats. That was, it was a great experience. It was definitely a learning experience. I was there for a few weeks, I think 3 weeks total, and I learned a lot. I've been doing at least, my friend calls me a professional babysitter, but not necessarily. I've been doing, psychedelic integration and sitting with people for 6.5, almost 7 years now. But that was my first experience doing it in a legal setting, which is actually, it's way more freeing than I thought it would be. But although I was really in love with the area in Jamaica that we were in, again, it's not accessible to everyone. So I'd love to bring that stateside, even if we have to figure out some kind of loophole to do it legally. I know New Mexico, you can grow mushrooms for personal use, but commercial use is not cool. So I'm pretty determined to find a way around that. That's kind of where I am right now, and that's where I see the future of psychedelics. I really do. I think it should be pretty accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time with a lot of guests that that fortunately, while there is still a long road ahead for that whole scene, fortunately that cannabis has done the heavy lifting. That I don't think we're looking at a 30-year process here, like especially like you said with Oregon and I that's the first I had heard about. Did you say New Mexico that you can legally grow?
Yeah, that's been actually the case for years now, and I'm so surprised no one, it's not a bigger deal. Yeah. Apparently, yeah, you can grow there for they've known medicinal purposes forever. They've known they have uses. I think that's so stupid. I want to say more than 10 years. I will look that up. But I don't understand why it's not more widespread. But even if it was for commercial use, I don't want to be that person. But there's not a whole lot of tourist draw towards New Mexico, as opposed to, for example, Jamaica or somewhere else, or even like New York. So another reason why you go there, because let's get real. For a lot of people, they're trying to make their experience worth it, not just their actual. If I have to fly somewhere, I want to make my experience at least something worth it. But I also don't want to make it like just a vacation touristy, drug tourism kind of thing either. I'd like to find some kind of a middle ground, and I think it's totally doable. It's totally feasible. We're just very much at that crossroads, like you said. Cannabis did a whole lot of the heavy lifting. We just have to be careful. In my opinion, it's really easy for the few. There's a few different resorts worldwide right now that are doing psilocybin retreats, and I think as long as they carry on responsibly and they're taking, crossing their T's and dotting their I's, we really have a nicely paved road ahead. Unfortunately, that's not always the way things work. And, we've all seen with ayahuasca retreats, things can get a little sketchy sometimes, and people can get, not as reputable as they pretend to be. So I just hope that we don't go in that direction. And then we can kind of keep on the straight and narrow and just get things moving before we have any, and unfortunately inevitable kind of road speed bumps.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure we've had with cannabis. They haven't been terrible, but we're talking about psychedelics here. they've got great power, but put it into the wrong hands, I'm sure someone, ignorant or irresponsible or just, at the wrong time can really just one unfortunate event can mess everything up. So I'm kind of weary about that, but I'm really trying to stay positive about the whole experience. The whole thing for all of us. We've got a lot to look forward to with all of this.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully, whatever legislature does come down the pike that opens up the door, hopefully it's not too heavy-handed. And then, because I mean, that's the other thing we see with cannabis, where it's very profit-driven and not really, medicine and wellness driven, depending on like what state you're in and what laws they have and stuff like that. So, it'll be interesting if once psilocybin is legal, if they'll just kind of do what's probably right about to happen with cannabis, where it's like leave it up to the states, and you're going to have some states that don't allow it at all, some states that have total free reign, do whatever you want, some that have like a total like like to be a psychedelic or psilocybin therapist, you have to have $100,000 a year license or something. Who knows what it'll look like, but I do think I have hope that the policy will not make it so exclusive, like you said, because that is honestly a worry of mine, to where like now, I mean, how much was that quote you got, Stan, for a psychedelic therapist?
Oh, it was like 200 an hour.
Yeah. I was gonna say I've heard on average it's like 200 to 350 an hour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for a psychedelic therapist, and that's that's just here, like in North Jersey. I know in New York City they get a little more expensive, and I know that doesn't include, like, if you want a whole psychedelic experience. I feel like that's actually more worth it with them. It's like $500 and you get like the whole day, but still, yeah, exactly. Like just, but again, it's not that it's not worth that money, because they definitely are. I mean, they're also putting their necks on the line to a degree.
Yeah.
It's that again, it becomes not, it becomes an exclusive thing. It'd be great to have some sort of a charity, a nonprofit where we can kind of recycle money back into it and help pay for people that cannot go and they cannot, they can't pay their own way. That's ideal. And my friend laughs at me because she's like, you're always trying to pay for people's way before you pay your own way. I'm like, yeah, I know, but with this especially, I just see it it's just crazy valuable for so many people. And especially people like when I was in Jamaica, I mean, I met people that had never in their lives done drugs at all. And then I met two people that had been in, a 12-step program for 20 years, and they were a couple, and the wife was on anti-anxiety meds that she had been prescribed after, a trauma. And to watch people like this that are like, listen, I don't do drugs, and have one experience, they went down there for the wife to have this experience, and the husband was like, oh, I'm just here to, support her. And he actually ended up tripping with us. It's 3 experiences throughout the week. And she only tripped once. He tripped 3 times. So 2 people from 12-step tripped, and both of them were like floored at what their lives changed like overnight. And I still keep in touch with them, and they're still floored. And I know both of them are off depression meds now, which is wild.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was kind of, and the husband was like, I was getting brain zaps, and the brain zaps stopped. And they've both been microdosing psilocybin for, I'm going to say, about 6 months. 3 months off, or 3 months on, and then you take some time off and you go back on. And at least in my experience, the regimen that I've done is the first day, and then you skip 2 days and you do the 4th day. So it's every 4th day. Essentially, you take a microdose. In my case, I think it's 0.15 grams. You shouldn't really feel anything, but I mean, it's spectacular. It's been wonders for my anxiety. Actually, it's been such wonders for my anxiety that unlike an anxiety pill where you're like, oh man, when's the next time I have to take it? Both times I've microdosed for several weeks at a time. I've actually stopped microdosing because I've forgotten to take it because I don't have same symptoms anymore.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm like, that's pretty, it's pretty great, and no real side effects, no nothing. So even that, when people are really terrified to take the full dive, just even microdosing is so valuable. yeah, I know plenty of people that have no interest in tripping. Um, but to watch them, just experience this and they're like, wait, I sort of feel a difference. And then they come back, 4 or 5 doses in and they're like, holy crap, like I'm showing up to work on time. My friend cried to me and she's like, she was motivated and at work on time. Um, and like, I was like, why are you crying? She's like, I can't remember the last time that happened. And like, stuff that you and I take for granted when people are in the depths of whatever they're struggling with, basic stuff really matters. Like basic stuff that you would never, showing up to work on time and actually wanting to be there. But and she just broke down. That to me is literally why I do this. It's why I essentially risked my neck for as many years as I did cultivating. And although I've stepped away from that, really, it's why I go so hard with education and why I try to educate myself as much as possible and reach out to people as much as I possibly can. Just I don't even care if they think I'm crazy. I really don't. At this point, I don't, because what's great is I've gone out on a couple of dates and we start talking about this and I get like super excited. I'm like a child and I start whipping out my phone and I've got like articles and I've got like what the psilocybin and the serotonin and dimethyltryptamine molecules all look like they're almost identical next to each other, and why they certain receptors, and like what your brain looks like understands, and people just laugh and I'm like, you can laugh all you want, but this is like the reason I'm so excited is because this is like world changing for so many people. It's just you kind of feel like a crazy person when you're the one that sees the potential, or the real potential, and people just haven't seen it yet. So that's cool. They can just look at me like I'm like the way people are looking at Jim Carrey right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you get people that are just stuck in their old ways and, wouldn't have even thought of the substance like that, having that much power.
Yeah, they don't know any better. I was seeing a psychiatrist, I definitely have ADHD, and I was seeing a psychiatrist for many years who I trusted. And I was very reluctant to tell her that, obviously, that I essentially fixed the depression that her meds couldn't fix with mushrooms. So I waited 5 years, 4 years. I mean, just earlier this year is when I told her that's how I asked her what she knew about psilocybin mushrooms, and she's like, magic mushrooms, like the drugs. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, no, here's the studies and this and that. And she literally laughed at me and she's like, oh, where'd you get those studies? And so I burst out laughing at her because I said, John Hopkins. And I look at the wall and I was like, the same people that gave you your degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of spent the next, again, she might think it's a kind of an iffy game to play with your psychiatrist, for the record. But so I kind of spent the next few months. Yeah, I know. I spent the next few months sending her literally every credible article I could find from, all kinds of like reputable science journals and mental health journals and map studies. And I don't care. Like, if I have science to back me up, it's not like I'm sitting there and claiming that I know, whatever, the earth is flat, whatever. But this is like the science is finally backing up what I've been saying for, like, this is, my subjective experience. And when I told her this, the one day she like laughed at me and she's like, I don't know what you think. You think there's like no other like side effects or whatever. And I almost couldn't take her seriously anymore. And I had to literally stop going to this person, because if you're being presented with all this evidence and you're just going to be stuck in your ways like that, then you just don't want to progress as a person. It doesn't matter what evidence you're being presented with, but it contradicts what your original understanding is. You have to, take a step back and be a rational human being and be, like, take that into consideration and maybe change your opinion if that's applicable. But
yeah, and I've found that at least for most of the science community, that as long as the science is there and the proof is there and the evidence is there, there's definitely those outliers that refuse to accept new ideology and change. I mean, change is a scary thing, obviously, especially in what you know and understand. But for the most part, I think that most people that respect science are very, very receptive with the data that's been coming out with all this.
yeah, definitely. I always tell I like to remind people, and even myself, that change might be hard, but staying stagnant should be harder. That should be like worse and more psychologically like terrifying, really. Yeah, complacency is not going to get us anywhere either. So yeah, I always tell people, maybe being uncomfortable is really the key to progress and the key to success with a lot of things. Yeah. Again, easier said than done, but
it's how you grow, though.
Yeah, it's exactly how you grow. I wish I had that Terrence McKenna attitude of 5 grams in the dark by myself. But and when I was younger, I feel like before I had that real first difficult trip, I was yeah, whatever, I'll take all the mushrooms if you give them to me. And now I'm like, well, I'd rather be a bit more conservative because like I'm ready for the truth, but maybe I don't want to get sent on my ass that way.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit and ask you about the facility in Jamaica that you volunteered at or worked at. That's the first time I ever heard about that, and actually the first time, I guess I never really researched psilocybin, like, I guess, treatments legally. But a few questions I had was just like, what is the process like? Like what, and then also like you kind of got into clientele, but what are the clients like? Are there locals? And just whatever information you can give to us about that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I went down there. It's owned by just a handful of Americans, a couple from Kentucky, nice people. And I believe there's a couple of silent partners involved. So what they do is they essentially offer a retreat where you can go for 7 or 10 days. And if you go for 7 days, you trip. There's 3 ceremonies, and if you go for 10 days, there's 4 ceremonies. And people go for all kinds of reasons. Like I said, I think when I went, there was 12 guests, and 6 or 7 of them had never tripped. And some of these people, you could almost see the terror in their face, but you could also see like the desperation. Like if they're that scared and they flew, halfway across the world to have this experience, like, that they need it. And you see everyone really does have a different need. There was a writer there, who was a wonderful person. I really love her. We still keep in touch. And like she had writer's block. She's like, I haven't really written as well and as fluidly as I wanted to in X amount of years, and that was really difficult for her. And she's like, I'm just here to see if it helps. Like maybe it doesn't help, but nothing else has helped. And like I said, I was there 3 weeks, but they were there for about 8 days. And to watch someone go from, it was night and day, these people in 8 days, it was wild. Like I just couldn't stop from coming to tears every time I really thought about it. And like watching these people just have these experiences, well, during the experience, just be in awe. And you get to watch these people that have never tripped before have this, like, we know it's like one of the most beautiful visually but also otherwise experiences you can have, and you're in a totally safe place, and it's just so nice to be able to hold space for them and just let them trust you. And it's when we tripped 2 times, we did it was in a big open field, and the owner basically sets up people to guard each exit, so we can all no one has to worry about anyone running out and doing anything wild. And they burn a big fire in the middle, and then Eric, the guy that runs it, he keeps up with the bonfire all night. And people just they kind of just let you do what you want to do without disturbing other people. Some people sit back and listen to music and make the experience internal, and other people kind of want to move around a little bit. But you're just there to make sure everyone's safe and comfortable and all that. And then the next day we have some post trip talk and integration and questions and whatnot. But to watch someone go from the first to the second to the third trip, and just to watch it, just their thinking transform, and they walk in and they were like, "Oh, I thought the world was this one way when I walked in here," and they were like, "I don't know anything. Like things aren't at all what I thought they were." And months later, people were still reporting, and they're still coming back and being like, "I'm still putting things together that I never knew I could think of, or I never knew I could look at them in this way." That's just me. I'm still, like I said, I'm still honored to have been a part of that, and that's kind of what I want to do forever. But they essentially trip 3 times, and they don't really, like, as far as the outside of the owners, they don't employ anyone from the U.S. They do have people kind of rotate in, therapists. A friend of mine, Brooke, who's a therapist here in New York City, she's down there actually right now doing sessions with them. Mm-hmm. They do rotate people, but as far as what he wants to do is just have Jamaicans for the most part work there. He wants to employ Jamaicans and really just, like bring the area income, and train them in how to cultivate. And I know he's the girl that there is a person that runs a B&B. She owns a house, Doreen, who is a wonderful person, and her daughter, CD, she's the person that's doing their cultivation for the most part. And she's awesome. Eric kind of taught her how to do all that. So it's a cool little setup they've got going on down there. I know. Are you guys familiar with Paul Austin from the Third Wave?
I'm not personally.
He's one of the world's experts. One of the world's leading. I guess I'll call him an expert on microdosing, particularly LSD, but other substances also. And he owns a website and a podcast called The Third Wave. And these people are all. Catherine McLean was the nurse on in the Spirit Molecule. She was
okay.
Yeah. She has she's worked with them also. The guys from Psychedelics, they were down there at some point. I'm friends with them also.
Awesome.
So yeah. But these people all Paul Austin owns a second retreat in Amsterdam. But that's just a truffle retreat. Apparently at some point Amsterdam made psychedelic mushrooms illegal, which I find hilarious because truffles tend to have serotonin in them also. So it's more like taking ecstasy and tripping. Like, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Don't know how far they looked into that, but probably not. But yeah, these are Paul Austin has a retreat over there, and there's another retreat in Mexico. There are two in Mexico. I'm not really sure who owns those, and I do believe they are also decriminalized in Brazil. But Brazil is also a wild place too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now especially, it's a little volatile to open anything like that up. Yeah. So I'd love to just bring that stuff stateside, because it's great what they have in Jamaica, but I think we need it here more than
Well, it's obviously definitely happening underground, but what is the dosages like? I mean, do you see, I personally have never done 3 in a row like that. Is there an increased dosage, or is there a noticeable increased effect that you saw?
Okay, so here, and I say this with a grain of salt, and I'm speaking from my experience, and not because I'm saying that my way is right or wrong, but my experience differs from the way they run it there.
Mm-hmm.
So in my experience, I know that there's a tolerance. It's only 3 or 4 days. And because I've tried it, I've done this. So for example, if you take an 8th today and you trip, if you wanted to trip tomorrow or, within the next 4 days, you're going to have to take about double the amount to feel about the same effects. So when people go down there, the owner is basically the person that decides dosages. You can say no, but again, I said a lot of these people don't have a lot of experience. So they just run with his suggestion. And Eric just kind of does it by feel. So,
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not in my, like, the way I run things forever. Not that, like I said, I'm not a therapist, but the way I run things for my purposes and for the purposes of being able to track, someone's progress, or tell someone, oh, this is when you came here a year ago, or when you tripped a year ago, and I sat there for you, and I made sure everything was fine. This is how you felt. This is how you told me you felt. I keep track of all that, so I ask people questions. I have them write things down. I write dosages down. I just want them to know for their purposes. Like I said, it's not like I'm handing this into like some review board, but that's they do it in a less structured way and a more freed way. So they just feel more comfortable that way, and that works for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just most concerned about just the buildup, and the need to take more to have effects.
Oh yeah, so the dosages up like an average dose buildup. I'll give you there's 2 other people who did something like this. So they started out at like 2.5 grams just to feel it out, and then the second trip it was something like 4 or 5 grams, and then the third trip it was something like 8 or 10 grams.
Oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. In my experience, anyone that eats that, maybe I'm sure there's people that can prove me wrong, but when you're eating dosages that high, you tend to not remember a lot of the experience. And you just have more of a chance of things going more intensely than you want them to, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would just be afraid of post-experience psychosis in people that maybe aren't diagnosed with anything. You know what I mean? Aren't officially diagnosed, that maybe have a diagnosis that underlying they didn't know about. Maybe like hypomania, and it may not affect
definitely.
you really, severely. But I know, I'm like, again, I'm speaking from my experience. Like, if I did any drug like too often, mania is really where I went. But even psychedelics, my brain needs time to process the experience and to recover. Not only there's injury, but you're creating new synaptic connections and just new neural pathways. Your brain needs a chance to hang out and chill out. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get your experiences worth from, you're going to another country, and they're looking at it like a give them a bang for their buck kind of thing. And that's great. But again, if I were to do something like that here under my watch, it would more probably be like maybe a 2-trip experience on 7 days, and it would totally be a 4-day in between, because I don't see there being a whole lot of benefit to taking that much, like that kind of amount. I think the most I've ever taken is 7 grams, and it was completely like not knowing I was taking 7 grams. You know what I mean? Just that's why I wasn't scared. I was too dumb to be scared. But these people are they're aware of their mortality, and that's not, anxiety is real.
Yeah.
I would be a little iffy about giving somebody 10, 12 grams. I think the person that took the most was 12 grams at one point.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, that goes right along with what you're saying on, not messing up this opportunity. And, I feel like that's not the best recipe,
And it's not like I said, it's not like I'm talking down. That's the method that's
no,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. But me, I feel like I'm way too cautious and neurotic, and maybe I'm just way too paranoid about this possibly going wrong. I don't want to be the experience. I don't want to be the reason it goes wrong. But yeah, with that, I just don't know that I can guarantee safety for everyone that's involved long term, because it does matter to me what happens to people when they leave my care, or when they just come to me for education. Like, it does matter to me what happens to you when you leave. And I think that should be a widespread thing in all of psychedelic therapy and all of psychedelic treatment. Everyone involved, whether you're a therapist or just helping somebody learn, you should really have concern for their well-being past this experience, because this isn't, like I said, to me, it's not drug tourism. You can go just for creative reasons, and if you want to take it recreationally because you're consenting adult, wonderful. But I don't need the recreational side of this to ruin it for people that really, this could save lives.
Yeah, no doubt. What have you incorporated yoga with a psychedelic experience before? Is there any benefit to that?
So I hadn't. Usually, when I take mushrooms, people that have had this experience may agree, your limbs tend to get really heavy. I know that when I stop moving around, I can't get up anymore. I mean, I can, but I feel like Gumby, and my legs and arms don't really work the way I want them to. So, actually, I will say this, I had probably one of the most beautiful trips when I was down there. Eric allowed me to trip on one of the 3 trips. I think it was the maybe the middle trip, but I took 4 grams, and there comes a time, like, after you're in the area where we're tripping, you can't leave for safety reasons. So I forgot my jacket, like a dummy, and I'm like, damn, I'm so mad at myself. And it's 6 p.m. and it's not super cold, but I'm gonna be chilly. So we take these mushrooms, and I'm waiting for them to kick in, and I start to like shiver. So I think I'm just gonna move around. So I start to practice yoga, just basic whatever, and I just started to move around. And as I'm moving around, I guess they start to kick in, and I'm looking down towards my fingers, and I see fractals like on my knuckles, and I've never seen fractals on anything but I did see fractals one time in a mushroom trip on psilocybin mexicanus, but other than that, it's just DMT I've ever seen them on, and that was crazy to me. And I totally forgot that other people existed, and it was this literal 2.5-hour yoga practice. Never in my life have I ever practiced that long in a row, or like in one continuous session. And it was just me, the ground underneath me, and the tree above me, and this connection with the earth that was so real and so raw. And it was just a beautiful experience. Just yoga really took me there, and every breath made the colors and the experience brighter, even if I kept my eyes closed and there was no there may have been visual, but there was no intensifying in colors. The experience intensified, if that makes sense. Every time I breathed in, which is something I do find, like, I haven't tripped that many times on DMT, but that do find the same thing on DMT. It just becomes more intense if you breathe like into it. And it was just, I was completely disconnected to the rest of the world. It was blissful, really. It was probably the most safe I've ever felt during a trip, for sure. So much so, actually, that one of the sober guides who that had not taken a dose that night came up to me slowly and was standing next to this tree, and I all of a sudden I was like, and I was like, oh, I forgot that other people like were a thing. Like, I just forgot that like people existed, and it was anything but me and the stars and this tree, and yeah, it was gorgeous. And and that's another thing. As I'm practicing, I was doing things that I normally cannot do in my yoga practice. That blew me away. And there was other people watching me. So I totally, again, because I forgot people existed, I didn't know that embarrassment is a thing. Like, I didn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't being watched, in my opinion. So I was like, I mean, there were versions I just don't normally do, that I was just flipping into and staying in. And I mean, I'm walking on my hands, tripping on shrooms. Like, are you kidding me? And it was just this like crazy deep experience. It just felt like I was really, really like one. Like, yoga means like union of your breath and your movement, and that's exactly what it felt like. Like, it was just one being with my breath and with the earth around me. It was just really fucking blissful. Sorry to curse, but yeah.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I couldn't. I feel like the words just don't do it any justice, and I didn't expect it. And again, I just did it because I was cold, and returned into this wild 2.5 hour craziness. And everyone around me was like, "We were watching you, and we didn't even know that. Like we just didn't know when you were gonna stop." And I was like, I kept telling myself, if you stop, you're not going to be able to get up again. Like, you know, the mushrooms are gonna take over, and just let it happen. Yeah, it was so cool. So it was just, yeah, it was the first time that yoga really made its way into into my psychedelic realm in that fashion. I have become a bit curious as to, because I know Kundalini yoga, not that I haven't practiced. I know Joe Rogan practices, and a bunch of people I know practice. Yeah, but it's basically made to meditate your way into a full-blown DMT trip.
Yeah.
And there's there's a podcast called Buddhist Geeks that talked about fMRI studies with people that were like, you know, lifelong meditators, and they gave these people fMRIs when they were meditating, and then they gave them fMRIs under psychedelic psilocybin, to be specific. And the one guy had never tripped before, and he was like, wow, I thought I'd reached enlightenment before, but let me tell you, he's like, when I felt that psilocybin kick in, he goes, my pineal gland kind of tingled the same way it would, which kind of blew me away, because I'm like, you feel your pineal gland, man? Like, that's impressive. I'm like, that's a serious meditation practice. But yeah, he's like, I felt more of a deep connection than I did, you know, and I thought I was at my deepest. It's so wild to see how powerful that experience is and how real it feels, because I forgot what the word is, but there's a word for feeling that the experience is more real than this reality. And that's very much how I feel. Like, it's not, and as much as I love science and I love explaining things, I can't explain the fact that when you get deep enough into a psychedelic experience, at the risk of sounding like I'm out of my mind, you kind of go to the place you go when where you die. And it's not scary. Yeah. You go home. It's not scary. You just like accept that this is what it is. And it's so freeing.
Yeah, and I mean, I've definitely had like weed experience. Like, weed mixed with yoga can produce similar results, you know, where it's just like you're so deep into the practice that you just forget about everything, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yoga is. I learned yoga by mistake. I had a client of mine, personal training client, that was like, "Hey, my mom teaches yoga. Do you want to learn?" And I am never going to turn down an education. So I was like, "Heck yeah, let's go." And she took the time and sat me down, and it was about a 2-hour basic course of, this is how you breathe. This is the point of yoga, because again, you're not being thrown into a class and expected to figure it out. No one tells you that there's a 3-chambered breath, or that, you know, there's supposed to be lines of energy or pulling in certain directions. And if you don't feel a stretch, or if you don't feel activation, you should be looking for this or asking for it. There's a lot of basic things that I was taught that really benefited me, and that it made my practice not just the superficial westernized yoga practice. And it's not to brag, but it's not. It's, you know what I mean? Like I didn't go to a yoga class for like a year and a half. And when I went, I was floored. I had basically followed videos up until then. There was this girl that showed me, and then I followed videos online. It was Tara Stiles, a girl that used to be a model and became a yoga teacher. She teaches in the city, and she felt the same way I do now, that Sanskrit, you know, when you go to a yoga class, they speak a different language. It's a dead language. Like, why not just teach it in Latin? I feel like that's so asinine. It's really exclusive. It's like me speaking Spanglish in a room full of people I know aren't going to understand me because I'm in a cool club, but I'm not. I'm just a jerk. That's really what it is. So, you know, exactly. Like, I'm Cuban, so my mother speaks Spanish. Like, a bunch of my clients at the time who wanted to learn yoga and did through me, but wanted to go to classes, they all spoke Spanish. And they could get by in English, but now throw another language into the mix, and I don't know. No. So, upon going to my first class, and I was like, say what? Like, my practice was on point enough to where this person pulled me aside and was like, your practice is beautiful. Where do you practice? And I was like, I don't know, lady, my living room. And it was like that. They're told me that to them, like, or to yoga studios, that's where I saw the first westernization of yoga here, where it was like they were worried about more of like what they sounded like the cool language they were speaking than the actual practice that was going on. And that was wild to me. So I've really taken the core of yoga. I mean, I could now, after 7 years of practice, I can probably like tell you if I hear something in Sanskrit, like a certain pose, I might be able to tell you what it is. But in reality, like, I can teach the practice much more efficiently, like getting rid of the nonsense, I guess. And the stuff that's like basically pseudoscience. I've heard a couple of things that are not that aren't real in yoga classes, and I'm like, yeah, we're not going to go ahead and teach that. Like, I'm just not. No, that's not how that works. But yeah, there's a lot you can take away from it, and I feel like it's so valuable in so many different areas of life. But it needs to not be an exclusive club. There's just a whole world of awesomeness. I like teaching people that are really reluctant. I really do. Especially, I'll bet people money. I'm like, I bet you $20 you'll hate it. You won't hate it. Like, I guarantee you, I'll teach you once, and you're gonna be like, well, that felt really good, even if I didn't know what was happening or what was going on. I want to do that again. And that's kind of like I said, that's kind of how I take the approach for yoga and for psychedelics. Like, I want people to want to be there, and I promise I can make it for you. So you want to be there as long as you trust me and you know, let go to a certain degree. Yoga is great because you have to let go, but you're allowed to keep strength and you're allowed to stretch, but you have to let go to a certain degree, and you can't judge yourself. You can't judge others. It's a great practice to learn life things, or a great starting place to learn life skills, I should say. I feel like yoga is the slow track to learning these life things, and psychedelics is the fast road, the showing you, what the end point is.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. It's like two coins. It's two sides of the same coin. It's really cool. And they both just fell into my lap, totally separately. But it's so cool how they overlap.
Yeah, I've just recently started the living room yoga with the intent of moving, into classes. My thing is more like kind of, I don't know, social anxiety more than anything else. Like, because I do have actually, I don't know how good they are or whatever, but there's like free classes at the community center that I go to the gym at. And, but it's all like soccer moms. And then, so there would be like me, this big, hairy, sweaty guy in there. So like, even though I know like no one's looking at me, like I can't convince myself they're not. And I couldn't get the benefit of the yoga until I'm more comfortable with, doing it and wanting to take the next step. So, I've just been checking out, different YouTube stuff and just giving myself like an hour a day to just kind of try it, and clicking whatever beginner YouTube, yoga, that sounds somewhat, not authentic, like you're talking about with the, different languages and stuff, but just that, seems to work. And, I'm hoping to build myself up to, feel confident enough to, start going to classes. But, I definitely see what you're talking about, that it's the the slow road and psychedelics being the fast road, because it is. And I've talked about that from, when I started the, my YouTube channel, that like, my experience with that place you're talking about, going home, is from psychedelics, but there's so many different paths to that place. And they all have different obstacles. They all take different amounts of time, but that's part of what, I consider the consciousness revolution that needs to happen, like in this country, and if you look too, I think yoga and psychedelics are have a synergy together, going back to, the 60s, the first wave of psychedelics, when LSD first came and hit the masses, before it was illegal. Yes, this had a lot of impact on society, through art and just writing and stuff like that. But that's when you started to see like meditation and yoga and a lot of different like things that are just kind of attributed to just like health and wellness now. Like those started gaining their popularity then from that first wave of like the consciousness revolution that happened in the 60s. And I think we're much like we're seeing the second wave or third wave or whatever of psychedelics. I think we're going to see all of these other paths start gaining in popularity and becoming, more widespread among people. And I think it's all great, like on our Discord channel chat that we have, everyone's on there talking about like their diet routines and their, just everything that everyone's doing to like kind of better themselves. And it's just great to see. I mean, it's like psychedelics that brought everyone to that party, but, everyone's obviously interested in psychedelics from a wellness standpoint, the same as anyone that's in, to any sort of betterment of themselves,
Yeah, for sure. It makes you want to be better, or it makes you aware that maybe you weren't putting as much effort into being your best as you could be, if that makes sense. It's psychedelics have a nice way, like I said, of sitting you down and being like, hey, stop your garbage, except it's you sitting you down, which really makes you it cuts the whole denial thing out of the equation. It's great. I really I think they're so valuable. Are you guys the plant medicine all around, I think it's crazy how much people discount it. Not that I'm like, let's rub lavender on your whatever that you need medication for. I think there's like a real place for modern science, but plant medicines are discounted almost like they don't matter. They don't count. Like you have to have some other whatever. But I mean, this is a perfect example that how long were psychedelics discounted? We discredited altogether. They stopped research on LSD like in the middle of someone's trip, basically, and that's so regressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've really taken an interest in the last couple of years. Most of the people in my family, I mean, I'm 30, almost 37, and I take no prescription medications, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only person in my family that can say that at I'm the baby of the family, but I don't think my brother or sister or my parents, were prescription medication free at my age. I mean, I attribute that to a lot of things, but one is plant medicines. Like definitely, I've probably used cannabis too much, but I think the medical benefits from it I've received, even though I've been doing it too much. And I've cut back recently and stuff like that. And Stan got me into like trying CBD, and that's really been an amazing thing for me for like joint pain, and I've been giving it to my wife. She has like some like kind of arthritis kind of stuff and everything, and so CBD's been a great medicine. I always look for a natural option for a lot of things before I'm going to go to the doctor. The one thing that have you had any experience with kratom or kratom?
Actually, no, but I was just speaking to someone just this past weekend that does have some experience, and I was unfamiliar with it up until a few months ago when I watched Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had an episode on kratom, and he was just like it's basically treated like an opioid. It's in that weird, although it's in that weird gray area of like legally, but this is saving people's lives from opiate addiction. People are getting off of medication altogether and just drinking tea. Like, I understand that there's like a level of dependence in people that live, where's it, in Taiwan, I believe, or in Thailand, where they not, that was pretty ignorant statement, but I'm not actually sure which of the two it is, but yeah, they chew on the leaves.
Thailand, yeah.
Yeah, Thailand. I don't believe they make tea out of it. They chew on the leaves, if I'm not wrong, and they've been doing it since they were children. If you consistently do something every day of your life for like that long, I don't even know if it might be a physical addiction, but at that point it's also a habit. Like, you know what I mean? Like a physical habit, like you're actually, So it's the rate of addiction here, according to the reports that we have, are pretty low and considerably low than fentanyl or heroin, or people in North Jersey die of heroin overdoses. I mean, all too often.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy here. So what are we doing? Yeah. This actually, I know it works as a stimulant in, I believe it's in low doses, and then in higher doses, it reduces breathing or whatever. So it reduces anxiety and it makes you slow down somewhat. How useful is that? I don't have personal experience with it, but my friend did. And how are we going to reap these benefits, or even know if they're legitimate benefits without studying this stuff? We're just immediately throwing it on the prohibition list. Oh, well, let the drug use go. Like, we'll figure out later. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. I think it comes down to when people I think the biggest impact will be when people in legislature, like when the people that are making laws are personally affected by this. Like when the first person that makes a law undergoes psychedelic therapy sees that, like, the benefit from that, I think our world will be blown apart as far as this goes. I really think it's going to take one person that can make a real difference, having a life-changing experience, for them to be like, holy crap, like this is something that really matters to the world. But until that happens, I think we're still going to be playing games with like how I guess how to get this out there, how to make this. And I actually have a fear also. Are you guys familiar with the whole Compass and MAPS thing?
Oh, yeah. I know about MAPS.
Yeah. So Compass is did you guys hear that the FDA approved, or they made, I believe, psilocybin breakthrough status? They gave it breakthrough status. Yeah. Okay. The reason that happened was not MAPS. The reason that happened was Compass. Compass is not a not-for-profit company. It's a for-profit company owned by a couple who has no background in psychedelics. I believe, I forget what they do, but they're billionaire philanthropists, scientists of some sort, but not psychedelic. Cool. So what they did is they found a way to synthesize psilocybin. And now my fear, and what everyone else here is fearing, is that, let's say this is legalized, through the FDA, like it's made an approved medication. When you go to a doctor and you get prescribed psilocybin, now they're not going to tell you to take any of the mushrooms. They're going to tell you to take synthesized psilocybin. If you've ever taken more than one species of psilocybin mushroom, you understand that it's not just the psilocybin in there that's having an effect. There's a lot of alkaloids in there that have different benefits and different whatever. So, same thing as concentrating THC into a pill called Marinol and saying that's fine, but marijuana is not. That's not how things work. So I'm not sure that isolating this chemical and giving it to people is going to be the most effective way to do it. But also my biggest concern comes down to the fact that it's $10,000 to synthesize a gram of psilocybin, and that is awesome. That's just ridiculous. There's no words for how stupid that is. But because we claim to not be able to consistently produce mushrooms that reach a certain threshold, or whatever that threshold is, I fear that it's just going to become so commercialized and so essentially big pharma, and we're going to lose control. So I'm kind of on the fence on where we should really, well, what we even can do.
Yeah. And we've talked about that, that article before about that company. And, you know, I mean, I think again, it goes back to, you know, cannabis paving the way for mushrooms. That I think, the good thing about the research that's come out about psilocybin is also the research that shows it's the safest drug there is. And so I don't think there will be much of a leg for legislators to stand on to make it, no, it's not safe if you have, you know, grown mushrooms. It's only safe if you get from this company, other than that company can lobby to get the laws to be written in their favor. But, you know, I think much like we were saying that it could be every state has different laws. Maybe in some states you'll be able to grow mushrooms. Maybe in some states you can only get the synthesized psilocybin, you know.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think, you know, it'll end up being that, you know, it'll be not as bad as we fear it will be, and it'll be better than it is now. And then I guess I keep that faith, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to keep that faith. I mean, prohibition has cost us enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just recently, you know, prohibition's everyone's kind of seen their angle or their whatever. I have a friend out or had a friend out in Vegas, a really close friend of mine, who was growing mushrooms, and in Vegas, is a legal cannabis state now. I mean, he was selling cannabis, but that's besides the point. Let's just say he's got the best informative friend, best tipster, let's call him. Someone gave him a heads up that he was going to be raided, and he was. But he had time to grab his stuff and bounce. And he grabbed his computer, grabbed his phone, and he destroyed everything. And he was facing 15 to 20 years. And he saw himself in a position where he chose to take his life because that was easier and less crap to deal with than 15 to 20 years when you're 48 years old. I never really thought that mushrooms could cost lives when it comes to prohibition, but like that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Like that's when I stopped cultivating. I just couldn't do it anymore because I don't, being so close to everything becoming so legal and so okay, it is heartbreaking to see like prohibition still taking lives like that, and taking lives in a way I hadn't seen coming. But I mean, we're talking something that's being studied for all the things that psilocybin is being studied for, and you're going to threaten to imprison someone for 15 or 20 years. You know, I think our laws really have to be looked at, and that's really concerning. These are the kind of things that I'm really fearing. You know, the direction that we're going, or you know, what direction we can go, and who knows. People make laws out of fear. These 70-year-olds want to pretend like they've never taken acid before, or they just forgot. I don't know how, you know, what their deal is, but they're like terrified of these drugs. Like, I don't know whether they're being paid off. You know, obviously people have special interests. But this is just, I just really fear for, like I said, it's a thin line that we have to walk, and I really have faith, but I also, you know, it's like a cautious approach. I guess I'm forced to take in a lot of ways when I kind of wish I didn't have to.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, prohibition has done more harm than good, you know, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how much good it's really done for anyone that's not a big company.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, it's just, and with prohibition of cannabis and psilocybin and everything getting thrown into there, I think, you know, partly why I also have faith that we're coming towards the end is just, you know, take the war, or the you know, when marijuana was made illegal in this country, it was all based on misinformation and propaganda, which, you know, it's just harder for them to pull the wool over everyone's eyes and get everyone to go along with it. You know, I think like they try to tie drugs into crime and say that drugs cause crime and, you know, we need to build walls or whatever, you know, whatever try to, you know, fear propaganda that goes out there. But I don't know if that crosses the line into mushrooms. Like I you know, I don't know if people would be like, there's this therapist who's giving people mushrooms and helping them with depression. And I don't think they can spin that into, you know, unless, and I'm sure it'll happen, there's some sort of, you know, therapist engaging in sexual misconduct with people that they're treating or whatever. But other than that, like, I don't know how you spin mushroom therapy into a fear story that you can get people to continue to support the prohibition. You know?
I think I might be able to tell you. I can tell you, obviously not firsthand, but I can tell you the story of a recap of the story of Eric Osborne, the guy who owns Myco Meditations in Jamaica. They were growing for a number of years and they were growing successfully. And, you know, like you said, they stay under the radar. No one's really worried about mushroom growers. So they were having ceremonies here and there for close friends that they really trusted. And apparently someone during a ceremony, which is why I don't do group ceremonies. I just don't see the point. More so I'll ever sit with these two people, because I just feel like you deserve attention and safety. But not that they did anything wrong, but I know plenty of people that do group stuff, especially, you know, even more intense, like ayahuasca stuff. But they were outside and this person ran off to their car and got in their car and got into an accident. And before anyone could stop her. And when they didn't kill anyone, but I believe drove into a tree, and tripping balls basically just spilled everything to the cops and told the cops all kinds of stuff. And, you know, it just took them down this whole road, and they both faced felony charges and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it comes down to also, like I said, being responsible or being more cautious about people being informed of what they can and can't do, or, you know, if you have to babysit a little more intensely, babysit more intensely, but just knowing what can go wrong and having some kind of backup plan for that. Yeah, we fly under the radar for most of this stuff, but I also fear, because people are being imprisoned for or put on 10 years probation, like for buying not illegal things like mimosa bark to make DMT. The laws are written so messed up that that was in another Hamilton pharmacopoeia where someone got 10 years probation for owning 5 kilos of not illegal bark. Very legal. Like, it's a gray area, I guess, because it's used to make DMT, but you can own this plant. You can grow it, totally legal to grow it, and you can have it in your garden. So, you know, I don't. I want to have faith in the U.S. government, but we're also running a little backwards when it comes to this stuff. I don't know that we can really trust. I don't know. I don't know that we can really trust them to do things correctly. Although I want to asterisk that story. I'm pretty positive that was in Florida, and they live by different standards, as we all know. So yeah. But yeah, it's little things like that make me question how far under the radar we really are flying. And that's why like I said, I stopped cultivating, because although the idea of not having psilocybin available to me whenever I wanted was terrifying, the idea of being put in prison for me trying to help people is more. And then I'm not going to be like, I can't help anyone from prison. And also, I'm not the prison kind. Let's get real. So yeah, I just I've never seen, let's call it the fear of God, but, like, you know, I've never really felt that. And this is I kind of feel like I'm tiptoeing on glass in this. It's a little iffy.
Yeah. Well, no, it is. It is. You know, I think, you know, I kind of overlook a lot of the horror stories and just look to the positive, but you are right that, you know, you can, like, yeah, they can have that retreat going on down there, but all it takes is one idiot to get in their car and ruin the party for everyone else, for sure.
Fall out of a tree 3 times onto concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Fun, interesting things. A lot of things that happen, even when you are doing the right thing. And another thing is, I don't believe in tripping when I'm sitting for people. I don't think that that's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't believe that. As long as I've been in your, like, as long as I've experienced what you're experiencing, I don't have to be experiencing it at the same time to be able to guide you through it and help you. As long as, you know what I mean? As long as you know I can empathize and I've been there, we're good. I don't have to be there right now. And I think that's a huge safety issue that I take maybe more to heart than other people that do this. And again, I'm being overly cautious, but I get scared for other people. It's that same feeling you get when a toddler's running around a glass table, where you're like, oh, you're good. Oh, don't die. Yeah. Oh, okay, you're good. Oh, you're not good. You're like, your heart flutters for a minute because you're just like, I know you've got this, but also like I have no right to babysit you, but please don't mess it up. Like, please don't mess yourself up. And this is not just not down there. I'm talking to a lot of people that do underground therapy and underground sessions, maybe aren't necessarily qualified. Like I said, there's no degree, but I feel like a lot of this is either common sense or precaution, or some kind of mix of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like it's a dangerous whatchamacallit to work in. Like I tell people all the time when they come to me and they're like, "Oh, can you supply?" I'm like, "I don't supply you guys. If you come to me, I can set up your experience, and I can anything you want in your experience, I can set it up." But at this point, like this is such a risky.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like I'd love to help people, but if I can, it's just so easy for it to be a real slippery slope, and for me to be punished for trying to help people. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I don't need that.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the way the structure is now, credentials or, ability are less important than just having the balls to do it. And, and to provide the substance for people, or, to be on it yourself during a therapy, I mean, yeah, like, unfortunately, as long as you're willing to put your neck on the line to do something illegal, you can make a living doing that because you're one of the only people that has the balls to do it, even though you maybe don't have the credentials or shouldn't be, so.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that you're probably not above being sued either. You know what I mean? Even if you don't get like legally caught, reprimanded that way, in terms of being arrested, like who's to say that someone doesn't have a psychotic episode or whatever experience and blame that on you, the unqualified person that gave them drugs? This is a pretty frivolous, we love frivolous lawsuits in the U.S. and a lot of people try to make a buck wherever they can, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So it sucks to have to take those avenues into consideration, but you do. I took a psychedelic integration course with the guys, Joe and Kyle, that run the podcast Psychedelics Today. They also run several courses, basically teaching people, the ethics of psychedelics, and that was a huge part of the course. And it's kind of the muckiest part. Like I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. But I'm so terrified of everything being so ruined for everyone that I take it very seriously. I really do. I have no tolerance for people that, are reckless with it. And I very much make my opinion known. Again, I might be some schmuck, but I've got a point when it comes to the safety and whatever. And I take it, I take it very much to heart. I really love this, and I want everyone else to love it too. Yeah. I really do. Yeah.
No, that's a really good way of looking at it. It's we only got one chance to do it right, and I think that's where the first psychedelic wave in the 60s, they didn't get it right, and look how long it pushed it underground for. And I don't think our society is getting so toxic and anxiety ridden that we can't afford to push what is the cure for what ails us. We can't push it underground for 40 more years, Yeah.
I don't think we'll last that long without some kind of intervention.
No.
Sometimes I sit there and I'm like, I have faith in humans to a degree. And then other times I'm like, do I even want to be helping us right now? I feel like I should just let us die off. I don't know. There's a lot of us right now. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of us, and we're not all pushing in the same direction. We need some kind of intervention because it's not looking great. That's all. I try to stay hopeful, but it's not looking great unless something like this really can make a difference. And I at the risk of sounding like an ignorant hippie, I really do think this can change the world.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, that's my whole motivation and mission with the podcast and YouTube and stuff is because that's all I can do, is tell my story, but also just try to connect everyone to get people talking about it, because, there's, we can be so influenced by articles and research and all this, but what's really going to change the view and move the winds of change is just talking about it and being open, yeah, I mean, that's how I found your Twitter. Like, you're on Twitter talking about these things and retweeting and spreading the information and the articles that are, shining light on the reality of the situation. And that's what it takes, is everyone doing that, and I talk to so many people that contact me and stuff, and like, they're either in their adult life coming back to psychedelics, or they've just been introduced to them for the first time in their adult life or whatever, and they don't have anyone to talk to about it. They can't talk to their neighbors or their family. And that's what I've been trying to do, is just kind of build the community that can talk to each other, and then take it from there. And I definitely I think more of us need to do that. And that's kind of the whole thing with Help Find the Others, is, help find the others that are willing to talk about this stuff, so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And like, make it a legitimate talking point, not just, like I said, I don't want to have that asterisk of, at the risk of sounding like a hippie, like, we should all make this a legitimate thing. I shouldn't have to like brace my next statement by saying that. We should all, this should be taking as a serious thing. And I think, yeah, correct. It's the first step. It's just like, spread the word. My mother thought I was an absolute lunatic, seeing me, trip balls and have a terrible experience, or have a difficult experience, so many years ago. And, last year when she asked me, have you ever done mushrooms again after that one bad time? And I hit her with, well, I didn't want to tell you, but this is basically what I've dedicated my life to for the last 7 years. And, at first she thought I was nuts. And then I start hitting with all this research. And like, her jaw just dropped, and she's like, she took me seriously. Like, this is not a joke to me. And now, like, this woman she's never smoked weed in her life. I think she's had like 2 glasses of wine ever consecutively. And she like tells people, like, this is what my daughter does. And this is not a game. This is a serious thing. And people kind of like, oh, this is now a baby boomer generation kind of talking about it, even though they haven't experienced it. I really feel like so vindicated that they give it some kind of credibility, because it's really credible. And that speaks wonders to me, like, that people can not experience it and be like, well, I saw, in other people the changes, and they're undeniable. That's just talking about it makes such a big difference. And I really appreciate you guys, like, helping everybody get us out there. This is what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I talk about it so much, and it's funny, like, I'll be at a dinner party or something, and, conversation will just lead to maybe, like in Ohio here, we're about to get some sort of medical marijuana. Not that it's the way that it should be, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And, say we're talking about that, and I will try to always turn the conversation into at least mushrooms, and if not all psychedelics. And I will get about 90% of the people will just laugh like, yeah. But there is always 1 or 2 people that will maybe take me aside afterwards, or send me a Facebook message afterwards or something, and be like, so where would I find out more about that? And so it's that 10% that you got to switch over to thinking about it, at least, even if they don't end up taking the plunge. And that's what, if that's all you can do with your life is influence 10% of the people that you try, that's good. So
yeah, I mean, 10% that's a big change of the population. Like, that's a huge shift in people's thinking, and maybe not looking at things like they're so like other people, like they're so the enemy. It's not us and the other. It really, we're all in this together, and we really are like one thing, one being, one entity. And as much as people want to say that they can disconnect themselves because of money or because of whatever, we really are negatively affected when everyone else is, or when no one is immune to that. We are one giant chain, and the quicker we really realize that, the quicker we're going to progress as a society and not fall into these terrifying pitfalls we've got going on right now. It's hopefully we can use psychedelics as a giant tool to get us unstuck from where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So Stan, you said that we had a voicemail. Do we want to listen to that?
Definitely.
And
let me pull it up real quick.
Answer that question or talk on that.
Hey Stan, hey Ruben. I just had a topic maybe you guys could discuss. I noticed on the last couple podcasts and stuff, you guys were discussing different ways to extract the psilocybin and different things like that to help with nausea. And I was just curious if maybe you guys have heard of the alcohol liquid psilocybin extraction using Everclear.
Everclear, yeah.
Or maybe have you guys ever heard of the blue honey tech, different things like that? And if you have, I'm just curious if maybe you guys have tried it or you know anybody who has, just different things like that. And yeah, I'm really interested in trying it sometime. I personally haven't. So yeah, just be cool for you guys to elaborate a little bit on that. Take it easy, guys. Bye.
There you have it.
Awesome. So, well, thank you. Did he say his name? I didn't catch.
No, he left it out.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling in. Well, I know about it, but do you want to talk about the extraction stuff, Jessica? Do you know?
I am really familiar with this actually. Yeah. Okay. So I've tried the Everclear extraction. I've tried a couple of times, and I've had mixed results. I can't recommend it because I can't get consistent results when I do it. Like dosing is very off for batch to batch and even from dose to dose. So I've tried making like not gummies. That's probably my next attempt making gummies, but I would make them from a tincture of really concentrated, like use the smallest amount of Everclear you possibly can for the most amount of mushrooms. So I don't even know what to proportion to tell you. You know what I mean? It would still be like experimental. As far as blue honey though, that is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I would get really decent quality honey. Don't get like, you know, I guess the store brand or whatever it is, decent raw honey. And you just grind up your mushrooms as fine as you can. I guess a smallish, like a pint, I guess, of honey. You probably add not even an eighth to, maybe 2-3 grams. And the idea is to have a teaspoon to a tablespoon, no more than that a day. I would go a teaspoon, and it's essentially what you're doing is microdosing. People swear in like tea form it does help with like stomach issues. A friend of mine was doing apple cider vinegar in the morning and then psilocybin like tea thing at night for stomach issues, and like reporting back wonderful feedback. Basically, it was for essentially just reflux and just a sensitive stomach overall. And they reported back great results. But the blue honey thing is great. You really don't have to take a whole lot of it, and you don't have to make it super, super strong. You can, but you don't have to make it super strong. If you do put a lot of the mushrooms in it, it just ends up being a little grainy, and it's got a little mushroom aftertaste. But as long as they're cracker dry when they're going into the honey, they should basically preserve forever. It's probably the most efficient way to preserve mushrooms for long term if you're afraid of them not being able to, you're not being able to keep them dry or whatever. For long term storage, this is actually a really good option for that.
Yeah, I don't know where I read it, and I doubt wherever I did read it was a very, reputable source or any sort of archaeological proof. But I did read somewhere that they found like mummy tombs with jars of honey that had psilocybin mushrooms in it it was still active.
Yeah, I believe that was in Egypt. They found jars of blue honey, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's wild.
Yeah. And I do know that Terrence McKenna talked about that. Like you said, they have to be cracker dry before you preserve them in honey, because if there's any water in it, it can end up fermenting. And I think he talked about that he thinks that psilocybin mushroom preservation led to the discovery of fermentation and alcohol and drinking mead and stuff like that. Again, there's no like archaeological proof. I think that was just a Terrence McKenna theory. But yeah, for any like preserving in honey, I was going to do it, and then I ended up not doing it. What you want to do is really dose it out and measure it. So you know that like a teaspoon has 2 grams in it or something like that, you know, put a certain volume of honey in it with a certain weight. And then, you know, cause it doesn't potentiate it or make the mushrooms any stronger. It's pretty much strictly just a, you know, an ease of ingestion and a, you know, preservation technique. You know, I will do it at some point. I just didn't feel like wasting mushrooms and messing it up. So, and as far as the extractions, you know, what we're dealing with there is solubility and polarity of the solvent. And so actually the most efficient, extraction of psilocybin is water, right? In making tea. I think the reason to do with ethanol or methanol is because you can evaporate that the solvent off and then just be left with, it's not just psilocybin, it's any polar molecule that's in the mushrooms. But if anyone wants to read about that, just Google crystals of the gods.
Yeah, that's where I failed. I failed on that text so many times. Yeah, that's I only got to the point where I can make it into a tincture, like a really potent tincture. Other than that, like I can't get it to work.
Yeah.
And when I dry them up, I don't know if it has to do with like, I don't know if it like loses potency. I am baffled. That same tech I've tried forever. I'm super curious if somebody else tries it, please. I'd love to hear like how this works. Or if it works for you, you know, what I'm doing wrong or maybe what they're missing. But yeah, super curious to see how that works. You're totally right though. The water should work the best.
Yeah, you can't evaporate off the water. So it you know, but that's why, like, I think he mentioned about easing nausea. If you steep the tea long enough, and especially if you do lemon tech or whatever, and then after it's been sitting in water for a good half hour, 40 minutes, you can strain the mushroom solids off and you know, have a little easier time with your stomach. You know, I get nauseous from the anxiety though. Like there's, you know, serotonergic nausea that I think that I definitely get. Cause I've tried straining out the mushroom solids and I usually do that. But I feel like I'm going to throw up, but I don't. And I don't think that has to do with the mushroom stuff. And I think that if I did crystals of the gods or even synthesized psilocybin or 4-ACO DMT, if I did any of those, I think I would still be nauseous depending on, you know, setting and how anxious I was and stuff like that. But you know, I think people mistake that a lot with like, they get nauseous when they're eating mushrooms and they blame it on the like mushroom material, but I think it's the experience more than anything else. But you know, that being said, reading like the thing that comes up of crystal of the gods, let alone the method of the extraction, the like trip reports and the stories that are on that page, you know, it sounds like it just comes on quicker and it's cleaner and stuff like that. So you know, there's good reason to try it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm dying for it to work. Yeah, I think, like I said, I'm gonna play with gummies. Maybe just make an extraction, you know, an eyedropper bottle, kind of an extraction for, I don't know, however much I can saturate that with, and then just do, you know, I guess try to dose out, you know, 1-inch gummies or half-inch gummies. I want a way to preserve edibles or preserve edible psilocybin that isn't just in chocolate. Not everyone loves chocolate, and a lot of these, like, you know, 2.5 grams of whatever, like, it's a lot of chocolate to eat. Your stomach's not gonna freaking feel great eating a baseball of chocolate anyway, and then on top of that, you're eating all the mushrooms. Yeah, the stomach thing is just, I think it's nerves, to be quite frank. I do. It's the same jitters that you'd get, you know, kind of the roller coaster thing, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've been talking about an hour, 40 minutes or so I think we can start to wrap it up. I mean, we could talk about a lot more things for sure, and you should definitely come back on at some point. But I thank you. You know, you're the first guest I've also reached out to, and so I thank you for making yourself available to come on and talk to us. That's been fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get back to you too. I might have some other people to send your way, maybe add some color to your podcast, and some people in the psychedelic realm that can maybe just have their tell you their experiences, and just like you said, find the others.
Yeah, awesome. And so if anyone wants to check her out on Twitter, it's just Jessica Morfa, right?
Yeah. It's Jessica Morfa. It's Jess_sweats. Like I work out sweats. SWEATS. Same thing on Instagram also.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll link that underneath the YouTube video and stuff. But and again, thanks for whoever it was that called in with a question. I definitely urge other people to call in to the Google voicemail, or you can text as well. I think we received a text, but I also talked to that person in an email, I think. But Stan, what's that number again?
It's 567-233-1335.
Awesome. And also for any like real-time questions that people might have, like the caller called in about, definitely check out our Discord server. Discord is just like a kind of messaging social media app, and there's an invite that I put in all the descriptions of all the videos on YouTube, and so you just download the app and click that link, and it's a forum with a bunch of channels and stuff to talk about different things, and it's really starting to take off, and there's a lot of discussion on there about everything really, so I definitely urge people to get on that, and like I said, if you have any questions, you don't have to wait for us to put a podcast out or whatever. It's just kind of real time. It's part of the community we're building here. So that's about it for tonight, and I thank everyone that's been here all along, and I can't wait to see where this stuff's going, and thank you for helping find the others.